afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. NFL Scouting Combine continues to be underway in Indianapolis, Indiana. Some of the testing going on with defensive linemen today. Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, it's kind of interesting. So I was at the Combine. Got to talk to a lot of people from Buffalo and also that cover the league nationally. Ken Dorsey's reputation as an offensive coordinator is pretty good. As a quarterback coach, it is really good. I mean, people cannot talk enough about how good he is as a quarterback coach. I know you've kind of addressed this on your show. What do you think how do you think Kevin Stefanski, Ken Dorsey collaboration works on the Browns offense?
I think it works well because I think they suit each other's strengths and weaknesses in areas of a lot of knowledge. Like they both have different areas of knowledge where they can help each other out. Kevin's really good with, those pre-processing quarterbacks, the quarterbacks who like to be on time a little bit more often. Then you got somebody like Cam who's done a lot of his best work with Cam Newton and Josh Allen. And it's funny that you hear it, right? He gets a lot of credit and a lot of respect around the league for his abilities as a quarterbacks coach. It makes you wonder at Josh Allen's development and ask a question of, hey, was the offensive coordinator responsible for this? Or maybe the dude who worked with them every day from 2018 to 2020 had a lot to do with the development that Josh Allen was able to make as a passer. Ken's played the position. He played it with high-level players and high-level guys in college. And that factors into how well he is as an NFL coach. So, yeah, I think Ken has a great reputation, and this is going to work well with Kevin because he's able to bring a different perspective and different expertise that this team, they were kind of struggling figuring out how to make things better for Deshaun Watson. Now you got somebody who I think is one of the best people in the league to put in that position.
Yeah, multiple people said, Brian Daboll was absolutely part of his development, but the fundamental work and the things that really helped Allen correct some of his issues with accuracy, it's the day-to-day stuff with Ken Dorsey.
Yeah, I mean, he's really important for that. We saw that Deshaun, he needs some refinement to get back to where he was just from a fundamental standpoint in 2020, because there were a lot of times on the short passes where his mechanics just kind of failed him a little bit. So he does need some refining in that area, and I think Ken will be helpful in that. And Ken also, this is a bit of a project for Ken, right? You're talking about a quarterback who has played 11 games since 2020. So there's going to be some real hard coaching in there for him, and I think he's going to do a great job.
All right, so other news that came out yesterday. Browns restructured Denzel Ward's contract, clearing $11.359 million in cap space. This is Mary Kay Cabot's the one that had this story first, so we're using this. It puts them under the cap by $3 million already with one restructuring. Having said that, there are certainly others they can restructure. Who are some realistic free agent targets and candidates for the Browns, do you think?
I think the Browns will probably free up around 55 to 60 million in cap space. Now, 30 of that they're probably going to use to roll over, so they have a budget of $30 million in cap hits, which means 1-year deal guys, they can go for a couple of those, and then maybe 1 or 2 long-term deal guys. I think Jordan Brooks, linebacker out of Seattle, is somebody that they're going to look at very strongly. You're going to have JOK attacking downhill, being near the line of scrimmage a lot. You need somebody to handle those kind of responsibilities when they have to go backwards towards the line of scrimmage. I think Jordan Brooks is a great fit to pair with JOK because he's more of a coverage linebacker and somebody who can kind of be that safety net for JOK, because we know that sometimes when he makes a bad decision, it's usually when he's in coverage, he takes a bad risk, and that ends up with the Jordan Brevin touchdown like we saw in the playoff game. Other guys, I think DJ Reader's somebody they should look at, somebody who could penetrate 1- 2-way goals that he's going to get, and I think he might be available on a pretty affordable number as well. We have to monitor what happens with Mike Williams and any other wide receiver that could be available. This is a good year to get the 30-year-old veteran, right? Like, there's so many good players in free agency this year. There's so many good young players, especially in free agency, coming off of their rookie deals, that this is a year where a guy like a DJ Reader could slide under the radar, or even somebody like Za'Darius Smith could slide under the radar and get to the Browns at a much cheaper number than they anticipated. Especially with the cap numbers going up, for those guys at the top of that conversation, the money's going to be a little crazy. But then once that money starts to run out, it's going to get tighter, and I think that's going to lead to some opportunities for the Cleveland Browns. So there's a ton of guys in free agency that year. That's just a few. But, yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, you read my mind. I was going to ask you about that. If you thought that would drive up the price of the lower ones, you think there's going to be that gap? You know, the higher ones get a bunch of money, and then it kind of goes to panic time, if you will. This is from PFF. So this is 2024 NFL Draft best case scenarios for all 32 teams. For the Browns, the goal, improve at wide receiver and run defense. Ideal first pick, T'Vondre Sweat. Browns don't own a first-round pick again, so some maneuvering could be required on day 2 to select a premier run defender, defensive tackle like T'Vondre Sweat, or linebacker Ejarian Cooper. Cleveland currently lacks a wide receiver 2. They could opt for a jump ball threat like Florida State's Johnny Wilson, or a movable chess piece like Louisville's Jamari Thrash. All right, you look at those. What are your thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I don't get the reasoning behind like predicting by saying that the ideal pick would be T'Vondre Sweat, because the Browns' run defense issues weren't because they were getting gashed up the middle necessarily. It was the motion throwing them out of position, right? It wasn't a brute strength issue is what I'm saying. Teams weren't plowing the Browns off the line of scrimmage. It was teams were moving the Browns off the line of scrimmage by manipulating them with motions and misdirections, which I don't know how much T'Vondre Sweat fixes that problem. Yeah, he's a big body, but he's not necessarily long. I think if you want to fix that, you just got to get more used to the motion, 1, and 2, get longer guys on the field, because those guys can correct for misdirection a little bit easier than a big old dude like, he's almost at like 360, like T'Vondre Sweat. So I don't know if that's a great move for the Browns or a great fit for the Jim Schwartz style defense, especially being in a wide 9 where he'll be left on the island more often instead of doing double teams. Then you have somebody like Jamari Thrash, who I do like. I think he is a interesting piece at wide receiver. I think they need some playmakers at the position. Amari Cooper is a playmaker. You have David Njoku. I think if you had one more, whether it be Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, Jamari Thrash, I think you'll feel pretty set about that wide receiver room. And I think adding a young wide receiver would also help you. Let me not discount David Bell too, because he's the one young guy that's actually like had some moments the last couple of years. So also him. But yeah, you want to have somebody kind of be there just in case you do have an injury at the position or a need for somebody else to step up, because they're going to blanket one of these guys in coverage.
Yeah, the other thing is, we heard on this show yesterday, Kevin Stefanski still very much thinks Elijah Moore will be ascending. He was pretty happy with what he saw, thinks he's going to be even better next year in this system.
Yeah, hopefully. And then I think a lot of with Elijah Moore, what will make him better is honestly better offensive line play. He's somebody who is going to kill you on a double move downfield. Remember that Pittsburgh game where like 10 times we're like, oh, he would have got 40 yards there, but we didn't block long enough. I think protection was a big issue for Elijah Moore. And I think he got better as the season went on. I thought he really came on towards the end of the season as well. So, yeah, I think Elijah Moore is somebody who definitely could be a breakout candidate. I thought he was within the range of expectations. I expected him to get like 600 to 800 yards. He got just in that 600 range. So he's definitely a candidate to step up. All
right. Do you think JOK had a really good year? Is he a top 5 linebacker at this point?
He's in the conversation for sure. Now linebacker is such a nebulous position now because there's so many different ways you could be a linebacker, right? You could be Micah Parsons, you could be TJ Watt, you could be somebody like Pat Queen, who's kind of an edge rusher, but still a stand-up linebacker. You could be somebody like Roquan Smith, who they don't even ask to be 5 yards within the line of scrimmage anymore, right? Like, there's so many different ways you can play this, but whatever JOK does, he's clearly one of the most talented players to do that, right? Like his short area quickness, his ability to get the guys behind the line of scrimmage, his ability to just win on a bad angle is also just impressive as well. I expect a lot from him. I don't know if he was in the top 5 last year, but I expect him to be in that conversation, if not thoroughly in the top 5 next year.
All right, before we go to break, some news and notes from Mary Kay Cabot from the Combine, some of the things that she has been hearing. Browns are going to have some competition for Joe Flacco. Patriots are interested in potentially signing him as a bridge quarterback. Browns have not contacted the Eagles about edge rusher Hassan Reddick. And the Browns sound like they are one of the top 2 choices to open the season against the Eagles in Brazil. Browns and the Packers are the 2 that the NFL is kind of going back and forth trying to decide. None of that is a surprise at all. You follow the trail. Alex Van Pelt is in Philadelphia. He had success with Joe Flacco. Patriots draft 3rd. That probably means developmental quarterback. It might be Drake May if you take him. You don't want to throw him into the fire that quickly. So the Flacco thing's not a surprise at all.
Yeah, it would make sense if they went with Drake May because that's more of a fit for what they like to do over there. And Joe Flacco is clearly a fit for what Van Pelt wants to do. And I think Van Pelt wants to stick to the Kubiak system a little bit more than what Kevin does. So if you go with Joe Flacco there, and remember, I mean, look, you're going to draft a quarterback in the top 3 of the draft. I know we all act like he's going to play for a whole year, but if you sign Joe Flacco, you're signing him to start like 4 to 8 games. And I think that's the perfect range to start a dude like Joe Flacco, right? Once you get past that, the age starts to be a concern. Like, can his body hold up for a whole season? All of that, like, you start to wonder about that. But Joe Flacco is kind of the perfect guy because you don't expect there to be much of a future with the guy who's close to 40. But also, you know, he might be able to hold it down long enough for you to get that guy behind him kind of familiar with what you want to do.
Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage, and I can step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk about the NFL Players Association report cards and where the Browns fit in that. Sports for CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Go ahead and pop a clamp on that.
Let's take 5.
With one of these 5 Lady Luck scratch-offs from the Ohio Lottery, like this new $20 100X with its $1 million grand prize. I want to get my cut of that 76% payout.
So, good news. We're playing the largest family of scratch-offs ever. These Lady Lucks have all the fun and no complications.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. So the Players Association does a report card each year based on how the players rate different facets of an organization. Take a look at with the Browns this year. So head coach Kevin Stefanski gets a B-. Now it's important to note 70% of the players feel Kevin Stefanski is efficient with their time. Players feel Stefanski is somewhat willing to listen to the locker room. They also did ownership. Browns rate a B there. Club owner Jimmy Haslam receives a rating of 8.6 out of 10 from Browns players when considering his willingness to invest in the facilities. The other thing that's important to note, this is irrespective of wins and losses. It's strictly, as J.C. Treader says in the rationale, it's strictly a workplace report card. It's kind of interesting, Quincy. I don't know that I make anything about it, but it's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think what you're going to find there, if they continue to do this, which I think they should for the next 10 years, you're going to find like the trend being, hey, the guys who really do well on the NFLPA report card are going to be the guys who are more known as players, coaches. And the guys who don't do the greatest on there are going to be kind of on that spectrum towards like, the disciplinarian, right? Like Bill Belichick didn't do great on this card either, right? You don't want to be where Josh McDaniels was, where he was at a D. Like, you clearly don't want people like to not like coming to work but you do want to be in that respectable range. I think there's some room for improvement for Kevin. I think they learned over the last few years, right? Because if they would have did this test a couple years ago, I don't know how high they score on it. So I think they're learning, they're continuing to get better, more in tune with what the players want. But, there's a balance. You can't just be all the way over there, right? You have to have some balance of what you want to do as well, and what's good for the overall team. So, yeah, I think it's an important thing to watch, but I think it's also important that people don't overreact to the grade one way or the other.
All right, kind of important. So this is Browns steals in the NFL draft the last couple of years. There's some pretty good ones. So Dawand Jones was the Pro Football Writers Association all-rookie team. He was pick 111. Martin Emerson, you see the touchdowns allowed and the passer rating. He was pick 68 in 2022. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Pro Bowler, led off-the-ball linebackers in tackle for losses last year, pick 52. They're going to need some more of that magic this year because they don't have early picks. That's one of the things you have to be able to do, and Andrew Berry the last couple of years has done that.
Yeah, Dawand Jones is clearly the biggest steal on that list, and it's because he's literally the biggest. Like, you don't get 6'8" tackle in the 4th round ever, and that guy be good. That you would have been thrilled with Dawand Jones at 28, let alone in the 4th round, 111. So I think Dawand Jones is the biggest steal there, yeah. But they're going to have to continue to do that. I think that's one of the most important things when you talk about how the Deshaun Watson trade has actually impacted this team. And this is one of the ways that the Browns have done a good job of mitigating the damage that trade could do when it comes to not having first-round picks, is they continue to replenish this team with first-round level talents. What you want to make sure in that kind of a situation that you keep doing is just have guys that you want to extend. The Browns have done that. So there's not going to be a discernible talent gap for 3 years of this team. You have guys who have aged well and are going to age well. You have guys who you're bringing in the new generation of the Browns. Like, you have all of this going together. So getting those guys in those 3-year periods, not in the first round, very important. And it's going to be important that they try to land on at least the starter in the future in this year's draft. But also, they are at the tail end of this. They'll get their first round picks back after this year. So, I think they've done a good job of getting through this era where they didn't have first round picks. And if they didn't get guys like that, it could be disastrous for the team, given how important Martin Emerson is to what they want to do, given how important Dawand Jones is to what they want to do, and given how important JOK is to what they want to do. It's important to get one of those guys in the draft every once in a while.
All right. This is from the Dogs, a Cleveland Browns podcast. Numbers that tell the true story of Jerome Ford's 2023 season. 813 yards, 240 carries is a 4-yard per carry average. 8 breakaway runs, 266 yards. 266 of 813 came on big plays. If you remove those 8 carries, he averages under 3 yards a carry. And again, Quincy, that's a concern. I'm not saying he's a disaster. That's got to improve. He's got to alleviate the percentage of negative yards, negative rushes.
I look at it different.
Okay.
Because if you want Jerome Ford to be your starter, that's certainly true. He has to find a way to alleviate this and be a more consistent runner. But if Jerome Ford's role on the team is to be a third running back, then I think that you're fine with that, right? If he's just kind of a change of pace, home run hitter guy, which I think that's his fit in the NFL, is a guy in a rotation of running backs. I expect the Browns to probably add a running back in free agency, so I don't think that he's going to have to carry the load as a number 2. He's going to be asked to receive out the backfield, probably be a third down back, and get like maybe 5 or 6 carries a game. And I think that Jerome Ford's fine with that. I think what we found out is that he's probably not a feature back, and I think he's not going to be a feature back until he gains 20 pounds, given that this is his 3rd year in the league or 2nd year in the league, and he's not even close to that. Tells me that he's probably not going to be able to do that. So this is going to be who he is, more than likely. So, yeah, I think he's fine for what he is. It's just you got to make sure he's in position to be what he is. And last year he was in a position to be something he's not.
That's fair, but the thing is, you can't have a guy that has over 16% of his carries went for negative yardage. So from year 2 to year 3, you got to cut that down. Even if you're the third down back, you can't do that as an NFL running back.
I look at him like a six man. Like he's somebody who is like, well, it's like if you give him 40 minutes of production, he's still gonna give you 20 minutes of production, right? Like I think just what happens is that you ran him way too much, and then it got exposed. Like, okay, like yeah, if you put him out there and teams are used to him running the football, they're gonna be able to get to him before he can do some of his burst stuff or get around the corner. But if you just throw him in there, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there, teams aren't gonna be that prepared for him. I think he'll be more successful and he'll be useful for what he is. I just think he just got to stay in that realm, because once you do, like if you do take let's say you do take Karis LeVert off the bench and play him 45 minutes a game, then all of a sudden, yeah, you're going to start to see the flaws, and that's going to feel like a big problem. But then you put him right back on the bench. Oh, okay, yeah, he's pretty good for that, right? Like you start to remember why he's good there. So I think that's just the issue with Jerome Ford. He was in a position where he wasn't going to succeed, and he's not meant to.
All right, here's a free agent running back, expected free agent running back. This is Austin Eckler, free agent profile. This is written by Randy Mueller for The Athletic. He was a former NFL GM. Eckler's 21 first downs via reception led this group of running backs. Slippery after the catch, runs bigger than his size, forcing arm tackles to miss like a larger back. Good natural vision to find daylight, nose for the goal line, plenty of gas left in the tank from a speed and acceleration standpoint, but he's at his best when he is supplemented with an early down back. Well, maybe a guy like Nick Chubb?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm on the Austin Eckler trade. There are plenty of schools of thought with Austin. Some people don't feel like he has any burst left,
right.
And there's been some evidence of that in his games. So I don't think they'll go that route. I think they're more likely to go, I believe, with Aaron Jones from Green Bay is available. Somebody who's like a short yardage back. Like, think of the running backs that the Browns are going to be looking to get are going to be the guys who can fulfill Kareem Hunt's role in this offense, right? Because that's who they're replacing. They're going to keep Jerome Ford on the team, so they have their receiving back. They have their guy that they could throw in there and change the pace situations. But they do need a short yardage back, and we all know with Nick Chubb, one of the things that you would think he's better at that he's not is that short yardage stuff. So you do want a short yardage specialist in there if you're going to have Nick Chubb in there, especially coming off an injury. I think they'll go somebody with that kind of skill set and not necessarily somebody with Austin Eckler's skill set, which would be basically replacing what Jerome Ford does. I don't think they're ready to just throw him to the side yet.
Quincy, Carey, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. I saw that Barry wants to move the trade deadline back 2 weeks, which would be week 10. I wholeheartedly agree. I think teams are still convinced that their season isn't lost by the original deadline of week 8. I mean, moving it back 2 weeks would definitely help with teams realizing that their season is over. But the drawback would be that now the new players will have less time to be integrated themselves into a new system. But even with that said, I would be thrilled with the deadline being pushed back to week 10. How do you feel about that? Thanks.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, Andrew Berry talked about that at the Combine, and he was very adamant, had done a lot of research. So right now, relative to the other teams, NFL has its trade deadline after 45% of the season is over. The other teams are in the 60 to 70% of the reason. The one thing that Andrew Berry did say is there are still, I think it was 27 or 29 of the teams, even if you push it back 2 weeks, are still in the wild card hunt, if you will. So there would still be a bunch of teams that are trying to improve. what they want to make sure they don't do is allow teams to tank if they've gone, if they've been eliminated. But Barry had done a bunch of research on it. He had it down. He was adamant about it. He was, passionate about it. And it made a lot of sense listening to him talk about it.
Of course, Andrew Berry can be passionate about the trade deadline, right? Like, he's been willing and dealing since he got here. So that makes sense that he spends a lot of time thinking about that. But yeah, I think he does make a good point. It's really early in the season. And I think it's like that because it's only been the last 5 years that teams have taken the NFL trade deadline seriously. Like, I know to some of the younger people in the audience, it sounds crazy, but there was a time where the NBA trade deadline was the only big deal trade deadline, and maybe Major League Baseball, of course, had a big trade deadline too. But the NFL trade deadline seemed like a joke in comparison, but that hasn't been the case recently. I think teams have been more willing to make moves during the trade deadline. And if you do move it back a little bit, I think that will encourage more teams to do so. I don't really see that much of a downside. I know our caller brought up that one of the downsides could be that guys have less time to get used to new teams, but we also see, guys like Joe Flacco sign here like week 12 and then, get to a point where they're relatively comfortable about a month in. I think you need like 4 or 5 weeks to really get comfortable enough with the team to play the game safely. So I think that this is a good move. I don't see any reason for it not to be approved. Like, I can't think of the counter argument. I think this is just something that's been this way for a while. And, we haven't really tried to do trade deadline trades that much in the NFL. So it hasn't been something that people have thought of. And now that it's something that people do, I think this is a common sense rule change that'll continue to go on.
Andrew Berry said you'd be surprised at how much opposition there is, but he said they're still discussing it. So again,
I would love to hear those counter arguments because I'm struggling to find there's no inherent negative where you hear it, you're like, oh, they'll never do that.
He would not give us what he has heard. He just said it's there. That's all he would say. All right. NFL, these are trades that NFL teams could make for cap space relief from the Bleacher Report. They have one for the Browns. Browns trade Jedrick Wills to the Rams for a 2024 fifth-round pick, 153 overall. Browns would save 12.8 cap space. The Rams or any other team willing to take a flyer on Wills in a trade deal. I don't know that I'd do that. The Browns seem to like Jedrick Wills a whole lot more than a lot of the fans do. They see the 3 tackles as being a huge benefit, and that's something else that Andrew Berry had said. Do you think they should trade Jedrick Wills? I know you've addressed this.
If you think, and not like on Madden, like in real life, if you think that you can move DeJuan Jones to left tackle and he would be better than Jed Wills, and you have a plan for right tackle after Jack Conklin, which in this draft, it would be pretty easy. I mean, Roger Rosengarten could be right there for you, right? Then, okay, yeah, this makes sense because you would be upgrading at left tackle. Like, I can see why. I just don't know if it's a risk at this point of where the Browns are would be willing to take, because the downside is you move DeJuan Jones to the left side. That completely ruins him. And then Jack Conklin gets injured, and you're right back to starting Garyon Christian, right? So that's that. You really got to figure that out. Like, do you actually think that that's a good idea? You could slow play this if you think that DeJuan has left tackle potential and have him do some left tackle stuff this year while Jed's still holding it down. And then when Jed walks the year after in free agency, you could see if that's a move you want to make. And honestly, DeJuan Jones is such a special prospect. I'm not going to try to do anything that could even get that close to ruining it. I would rather do the slow play, wait. Yeah, it's going to be awkward. Jack Conklin's going to have to sit the bench, but okay, we'll live with it. We know we have at least a starting caliber left tackle right now in a really good right tackle situation, and I think that's better than throwing both of those positions in huge question marks.
Well, the other thing is your franchise quarterback, who you're paying $230 million to, is coming back off a broken shoulder and a messed up rotator cuff, so you better protect that investment.
Yeah. I mean, everything you do predicates off this offensive line. So yeah, you should. Honestly, 3 tackles is fine to me. I know it's expensive, but if the team can afford it, they can afford it. Now, this might change. Like, it might be something worth the risk if they feel like Chris Jones is gettable or some big ticket item like that is gettable and they need to free up some space. This might be a risk worth taking to get that player. But outside of something like that happening, I don't think that this is worth doing.
All right. This is potential landing spots for free agent defensive tackles. This is from Pro Football Focus. Maurice Hurst. They say potential landing spots, Bengals and Lions. Hurst is always productive when healthy, but the when healthy part is unfortunately the challenge. Shelby Harris. Potential landing spots, Ravens and Jets. Harris had a solid year in Cleveland and should be a quality member of an interior rotation for a few more years. So they have both of those guys getting away from the Browns, and they have the Browns signing Kevin Givens, potential landing spot, Bears and Browns. He was with the 49ers last year. Cleveland and Jim Schwartz want to be stout and deep along the defensive line. Givens could replace some of the production from Shelby Harris and or Maurice Hurst. I think the Browns want Hurst and Harris back if they can get them at a decent price.
Yeah, I would, right? They're not going to be that expensive. 1-year deals, probably like $5 million combined at the most. So I think they'll just bring him back. I like Maurice Hurst. I think he's exactly what they want, a tackle who can kind of get downfield and get some pressure. Same thing with Shelby Harris. And one of the things that Shelby Harris was really critical in, he had a lot of bat downs. Like, I don't know if they tracked those, but I can count off the top of my head like 5 times he had a pretty important bat down in the game. And that's just veteran stuff, right? Just being able to make a play, being sticky. So I think they want to keep those 2 around. And I think they're probably interested in adding one more, missile to that arsenal that they have on the defensive line, probably in the interior tackle position. But yeah, I think they'll try to bring those guys back as well.
Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Now I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, Myles Garrett. Talk a little bit about him. You got to hear what LeBron James said about him as well. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. Continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. So take a look. Myles Garrett working out with LeBron James and, throwing around some pretty decent weight there. This from Myles Garrett's Instagram as he and LeBron James going through a workout. LeBron James was asked, actually post-game, he kind of talked about that as well.
And then lastly, we saw the Instagram video of you and Myles Garrett working out. What was that like?
I mean, he's an absolute beast. Defensive Player of the Year for a reason, and is going to continue to be great. So, I've always felt like it's my job to continue to show the next generation the way, show them the blueprint, no matter regardless of sport. So it was a pleasure for me, and I hope it was for him as well. Just 2 kids just trying to be great.
And Quincy, it's kind of cool just watching it. To play at the level LeBron does, he gets after it, and it's kind of interesting to see him and Myles Garrett working out together.
Yeah, and what a moment for Myles Garrett there. They asked him about you. Like, what was it like to work out with you? But also shows you, like, the level. I think it's kind of hard for us to gauge this because, like, we're not used to Browns players reaching a level of mainstream popularity from what they did as a Cleveland Brown. Like, yeah, Odell Beckham was a mainstream superstar by the time he came to Cleveland, but all that happened in New York, not really in Cleveland. Myles has reached this level of popularity off of the strength of his body of work in Cleveland, so much so that after a game where LeBron James was incredible versus the Los Angeles Clippers, they're asking LeBron about working out with him. Like, that is true star power there that they have on this team. And it sometimes I lose perspective of it. I just think of Myles Garrett, Cleveland Browns player, that we only care about him in Cleveland. Yeah, he's a big deal now. Myles is a huge deal now. But yeah, it's good for Myles that like LeBron James got asked a question about working out with you. And that showed you how far you done came, man.
All right. Take a look at this one. This is from Pro Football Focus. Highest graded edge defenders from the 2023 season. Myles Garrett, top, 93.6. Garrett gave blockers fits all season, leading his position in pass rush win rate, posted career highs in run stops, 22, tackles for a loss or no gain, 13, tied for third with 4 forced fumbles. Mike Parsons was second, 92.4. Nick Bosa third, 92.9. Za'Darius Smith tops in at the top 20 as well at 17, 83.1. While he recorded his first single-digit sack season since 2017, he'll be 32 in 2024. He's still 11th in edge defenders pass rush win rate, recorded 19 total stops, and he led Cleveland's edge group in missed tackle rate, 22%. So the question, Quincy, is how important do you think the Browns are putting an emphasis on getting Za'Darius Smith back? Because he is the guy that they brought in when Myles, now there were other upgrades, but he's kind of the 1B or 1A, if you will, to Myles when he wins his Defensive Player of the Year award.
Yeah, I think if Za'Darius gets like a couple of multi-year offers, I think the Browns are out on that. But if it becomes obvious that he's going to be back in the 1-year market, then I think it'll be very important for them to bring him back, right? Like, if it's possible. I don't know if they're going to be multi-year deal with him, but I think they'll give him another 1-year deal. But yeah, Za'Darius Smith, he provided a lot for this team. I think he'll have a better year next year, to be honest. I think he played so much of this year injured, trying to learn a new defense, getting used to a different role than what he was used to. I think he'll step up and be a lot better next year for whoever he plays for. But yeah, Myles Garrett, heck of a season, won Defensive Player of the Year. And that run stop number is one that don't get talked about enough. Myles used to struggle a little bit in run defense, and now it's a strength of his as teams have not let him go off as a pass rusher and decided that they'll just live with what they can live with. He's made that even harder by being a better run defender than he's ever been. The improvements to his game are tremendous, and if you ever want to put in perspective how good Myles Garrett has been this last year, teams are resorting to tactics that they used to resort to when Myles was at Texas A&M, which is to say that they basically have given up on stopping him, right? Like, you watch your Texas A&M tape, and they're like, no, we're just not going to worry about it. We're not going to do anything with that side anymore. We'll just do other stuff because they just had no more answers. Myles Garrett has reached that level of dominance that he was at in college in the NFL. It's impressive, man.
Well, it says a lot when Jim Schwartz says there's two guys that opponents need to look at and say, okay, we're not letting Myles Garrett beat us. The other guy was Calvin Johnson. Those are the two guys that he said opponents start their team meetings with. This guy ain't beating us, and this guy ain't beating us that he's coached.
You play the Browns 3 weeks before. You're asking, hey, man, so if you're like the left tackle for a team that's got the Browns on the schedule, they're asking, like, hey, so, like, what do you think are we doing for, like, week 5? Have you thought about that yet? Ooh, you know what? We should bring a tight end. I saw them do this tight end. Like, every time somebody has a successful thing, they bring that up in a meeting. Like, they prepare for Myles year-round. Like, that is the biggest test, right? When if an offensive tackle wants to get paid, they circle the game where they play 95 because they know if they have a good game against 95, that's going to be the barometer for him. But he's the barometer. Like, that's the dude, right? The same way that if Joe Hayden let Calvin Johnson only get 50 yards and a touchdown, we would be thrilled. It's the same way teams feel about only letting Myles get a sack and maybe a tackle for loss.
All right, before I let you go, this is kind of interesting. Since 2022, records in home games for NFL teams, these are the best. Warren Sharp tweets this out. Cowboys 16-1, Bills 14-3, Niners, Eagles, and Dolphins 13-4, Bengals 12-4, and the Browns the same record as the two-time defending Super Bowl champs Kansas City at 12-5. So the Browns. The next evolution is you win at home, then you figure out how to win on the road, and that's how you go from being a team that's kind of AFC wild card fringe playoff to being a division challenger. They got to win. They got to figure out how to do it on the road. But that's the start. You make sure teams cannot come into your stadium and beat you, and the Browns are starting to do that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the same evolution that we're seeing with the Cavs right now, where last year they were a great home team, under 500 road team, but then this year they've been a great home team and as good as a road team, right? And you see all the difference that's made to that. They're the 2 seed right now in the NBA. So, yeah, I think that's going to be the difference for the Browns. So they want to go from wild card contender to division champion, home playoff to 1 seed contender. That's what they need to do. That's the leap that they need to make. You look at the games that they lost this year that you felt like they should have won. Immediately, we look at 2 road games, right? We look at the Pittsburgh game and we look at the Seattle game. You win those 2 games, you might be the 1 seed.
Quincy Carrier, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
Thank you, man.
Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff. Untitled, unfiltered Browns coverage. Really good Browns stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily Network 216 straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Here comes the rush.
All right, everybody, let's take 5. With one of these 5 Lady Luck scratch-offs from the Ohio Lottery.
Like the $10 Lady Luck 50X. It's got prizes all the way up to 500 grand, so you could really clean up.
The Lady Luck family of scratch-offs is the Ohio Lottery's first ever, with 5 price points from $1 to 20. They're an easy way to cook up some fun.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I think this past season really showed me something. First of all, Deshaun Watson is accident prone. The way he plays, he's always going to be out part of the season for some injury and can't deal with that. And the other thing it showed me was Joe Flacco still got some in the tank. And personally, I would try to trade Deshaun Watson and go with Flacco. I know it's controversial, but whatever. We could still get 3 good years out of Flacco. And if you trade Deshaun Watson, the cap money we'd save, you could hire 5, 7, 10 good players with what you'd save on him. And the other thing is we'd get back a draft prospect. I hope they don't draft a wide receiver because they couldn't hit one with any of their picks. They do better with drafting corners and safeties. All right. Love you. Love the Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily Network 216. Casey, there'd be a dead cap hit because of the guaranteed contract. But I just want to point, 2018, 2019, 2020, Deshaun Watson didn't miss a game in his second, third, and fourth years with the Texans. He did tear his ACL in a non-contact injury that ended his rookie season, and he got banged up last year. A little bit of bad luck. I mean, yes, he needs to be on the field more. I wouldn't go down the Joe Flacco road. I would love him as a backup, but if you're expecting a guy in his 40s to survive 18 games or 17 games in an NFL schedule, I'm not sure I want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I get where the caller's coming from. Like, it felt like he was snake bitten last year, but as you pointed out, that's not who he's been throughout his career. He hasn't been injury prone. I am more concerned about this injury and him coming back and how it affects his play style than I am just, reoccurring, just getting injured here and there. But I do believe, given that you're in your winning window and given that he is coming off a unprecedented injury, it's not like an ACL where we can say, oh, that's 9 months, or a torn Achilles where he'll probably be ready to go, but it'll be the year after when we find out if he gets back to his, his healthy self. This is unprecedented. So I do think you need to insulate and get a backup quarterback that you can count on for a stretch if you need to. This is the NFL, and when you're allocating that much of your cap to one player, to a quarterback, you can't turn around and, give a big chunk, to a backup quarterback. So they have to be smart and they have to navigate this. They made their bed, though. Like you pointed out, the dead cap would be devastating to trade him. So they this is where they're at. They made their bed. They got to lie in it now. And like you said, it's all about him getting back on the field and staying on the field. And if that happens, we're not worried about who the backup is or what Joe Flacco can do for 3 seasons. Yeah, the other thing is he's. I don't want to see him. I get the caller's point. I don't want to see him taking hits. Get out of bounds. Get the yardage. Get out of bounds. You're more valuable than an extra 2 or 3 yards. And the other thing, we talked about it earlier in the show. Mary Kay Cabot, had mentioned Patriots are interested in Flacco as a bridge quarterback, which means they're probably looking at drafting a developmental type guy in this year's draft. So you're going to have competition for him. Anyway. This is from Dog Pound Daily. Browns would be foolish not to pursue underrated running back with ties to Ken Dorsey, and they're referring to Devin Singletary. So Singletary's Spot Track is projecting his new base salary, $4.3 million a year, on his next deal, projected 3-year deal, like $13 million, which would make him like the 21st highest paid running back in the league. That from Pro Football Network. Singletary's an intriguing guy. I think you have to find somebody to pair with Nick Chubb so you don't ask Nick Chubb to do more than he's ready to do physically. Yeah, this isn't just looking for a change of pace back. You need a guy who can share the workload. And Devin Singletary is on my list. If they decide to go free agent running back, he's definitely on my list. Coincidentally, the guy that's slightly ahead of him on my list is his ex-Bills teammate, Zach Moss, who also played under Dorsey. And when I was kind of sizing the two up, they're very similar players. They have estimated, I think, 4.6 for Moss, but Moss is a little bigger. I think Singletary had 4.2 yards a carry last year. Moss had 4.3. They both caught, I think, Singletary caught 30 balls for $193, while Moss caught 27 for $192. Very similar in that regard. Moss edged him out on the touchdowns, but it's the tread on the tires. Singletary has 888 carries in his career, while Moss only has 484. So that's where I would tip the balance. But you couldn't go wrong either way if they decide to go the free agent route to get a running back. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because clearly I believe they're going to restructure some of Nick Chubb's contract, and then I think they'll put incentives in it where he can make every dollar back and maybe even a little bit more
if he comes back and is the Nick Chubb that everybody's used to. All right. Free agent defensive tackles the Browns could target. This from BrownsWire.com. Number 1, DJ Reader has some injuries in recent years, but is one of the best anchors in the run game over his time in Cincinnati. Andrew Berry has shown willingness to take chances on injury-prone players, getting them on more cost-effective contracts. And Teair Tart wasn't a great year for Tart on a bad Titans team before he was eventually waived, claimed by the Texans. History between Tart, Jim Schwartz. He could be interested in bringing in a player with experience in his scheme. Your thoughts on Reader and Tart? Reader, I think, had like a quad injury, which concerns me if you're anchoring a defense on the line.
Yeah, if I had to choose between the two, I lean Tart because of that scheme familiarity. The good news is neither of these players lit the world on fire last year, so they wouldn't command a large contract going forward. And the Browns were in on Reader before, so they might go down that avenue again. But if I look at this defensive tackle room the way it's currently constructed with only Tomlinson and Siaka under contract, I look at the 3 guys that they're could potentially be moving on. I'm trying to get 2 or 3 of those guys back. I think Hurst is a priority for me. Rotational pass rushing defensive tackle fits the scheme really well. Try to lock that down. That's not going to cost you a ton of money. And then I offer Shelby Harris. If Harris turns that down, I take a smaller offer to Jordan Elliott. And I think if you get 2 of those 3 defensive tackles back, I think you would probably target a defensive tackle in this draft instead of going with a rental free agent. Yeah, it makes sense. That line played significantly better, and I'd be curious to see if they develop with another year together. I'm with you with Hurst and Harris. I thought both of them were really good, and I don't think they'll get huge contracts in free agency, and I'm sure the Browns will try to get them back. Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily, Network 216, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we turn our attention to some draft-eligible players. We know the Browns have met with a running back. We'll tell you who. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
All right, everybody. Let's take 5. With one of these 5 Lady Luck scratch-offs from the Ohio Lottery.
Like the $5 25X. It's a nice way to nab up to 150 grand.
The Lady Luck family of scratch-offs is the Ohio Lottery's first ever, with 5 price points from $1 to $20. They're an easy way to break into some fun.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily, Network 216. NFL Scouting Combine underway, and that's where prospects meet with teams. The Browns have met with a running back, Notre Dame's Audric Estime met with the Browns. According to league sources, he is definitely in the Browns' age guardrails. He won't turn 21 until September, so football season. Take a look at Estime's stats. 7th in the NCAA, 15-plus yards rushing. 9th in yards after contact. 66.5% of his yards were after contact, higher than Christian McCaffrey last year, who had 64%. Casey Estime, bigger back, and it'll be interesting to see. You know, we had talked to Dane Brugler, draft analyst from The Athletic, on the show yesterday, and he said that 3rd, 4th round range is where Estime could be. It'd be hard to pass up that. if he's sitting there, and I could see Andrew Berry making that move. Yeah, Estime is one of the funner guys you get tape on. He punishes people. As Mac astutely pointed out, after contact, he's a beast. He leaves his feet a good deal, leaping over defenders, which, you can get away with that every now and again. I would caution running backs against that in the pros, but yeah, Estime is a ton of fun. I think he falls in the same bucket as another young running back, Braylon Allen, also big, punishing. He's a little bit younger, but these guys are 20 years old. This is directly in the Browns' wheelhouse if they decide to go free agent running back and you're not allocating a high draft pick. Round 4, it's kind of hard to turn down a prospect like that who has potential starter written all over. All right, so these are 4 defensive prospects the Browns need to monitor at the scouting combine. This from Dog Pound Daily. Number 4, Jarian Cooper, linebacker from Texas A&M. Only starting linebacker still under contract for the Browns is Sione Takitaki, so that fits that idea. Number 3, defensive tackle, Florida State's Braden Fisk. Also played at Western Michigan before moving there. So if they can't get both Harris and Hurst back, you might look to the draft. Edge rusher, Braylon Trice from Washington. And the number 1, they go with defensive tackle from Michigan, Chris Jenkins. Now, we know the Browns like the athleticism. Take a look at Braylon Fisk. This from Next Gen Stats. He's the first defensive tackle to lead his position group in the 40-yard dash, 4.75, vertical jump, 33.5, and broad jump, 9 feet 9 inches since Tank Johnson in 2004. So again, you see the athleticism score. That's going to be an intriguing guy. It's a guy that has some history, was at Western Michigan before he went to Florida State as well.
Yeah, for the record, I did not write this, but this is an excellent list by Randy Gurzy. I like all the players on this list. Braden Fisk, first off, like those athletic measurables are fantastic because his tape is effort, high effort player. Like this guy really gets after it. He can get caught at the line of scrimmage playing patty cake, but once he disengages, he comes screaming down the line at you. The funnest guy on this list, though, is Edgerrin Cooper. His tape's amazing. Like it's crazy. Like I think he's position agnostic in that linebacker room. I think you could play Sam, Michael, or Will, whoever you need. He's the most weaponizable linebacker in this draft, in my opinion. Just someone, I think he had like 8 sacks and 17 tackles for loss. He's definitely a ton of fun to watch. Can't wait to see how he tests. But he's someone I think he's going to be available in round 3. I don't think he's going to go in his first 2 rounds, so he could, provide a interesting value there for someone who could be a high motor player to pair with JOK. Then you go down. The one really for me is Trice. Trice is a guy that if he's there at 55, I don't think you can turn it down. The Browns get caught in this recycling. We have to rent an edge opposite of Myles year in, year out, a veteran. I think this would put an end to that. I think this is someone that would be, by the end of his rookie year, he's your starter. I love his measurables. I love what he provides as a run defender. Long, he is definitely that type that the Browns have, 6'5", 270. He fits the bill. But if they're looking for a defensive tackle who can stop the run, look no further than Chris Jenkins. That dude is amazing at the point of attack and someone who could just be a plug-and-play run-stuffing defensive tackle even as a rookie.
All right, before I let you go, this from the 33rd team, so those are former player personnel guys, NFL executives. They did a mock draft, and for the Browns, at number 55, they go with Xavier Worthy. A lot of speed, a wide receiver. What do you think of Worthy?
A speed merchant. Like he's slide to frame, which will worry some people. He's not big, and we don't have to think back too long to our last slider frame speed guy to give you caution. But if you watch his tape, this kid tracks the football. This isn't a track athlete transitioning to wide receiver. This is a football player with track speed. And if he's there, he's going to provide a problem to the front office if they pass up on him, because he is someone who can stretch the field and fulfill a need that the Browns have desperately been looking for the past 4 seasons.
The other thing is from what I've seen, he's a guy that you can throw slants to, and you can also throw screens to. And that's, if you have speed, those are the 2 things that you want to do in addition to getting behind the defense.
Yeah, and if that defensive back misses the tackle, look out, because this kid can flat out fly.
Yeah, nobody's catching him. That's in the track world. There's nobody behind you, and he's not used to being caught.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he clocks in at. I expect at least mid 4.3s. Anything above a 4.36, I think, would be disappointing for him, given what his GPS speed has been tracked at this year in college.
Yeah, we saw a 4.29 on his scouting thing, so we'll see. All right, round 3, pick 86. They go with a running back, Trey Benson from Florida State. Your thoughts on him?
Benson, I have him, coming into this process, he was my 2nd overall back. He slid back to about number 5 right now. I have estimated slightly higher than him, as well as Braylon Allen. But I think he's more complete than those 2. I think if he could step in and be someone who could give you that third down value as a pass catching running back as well, I have him slightly ahead of Marshawn Lloyd, another guy who I believe give you those same characteristics. But this is that sweet spot. Between rounds 3 and 4, you're going to see a lot of talented running backs start to come off the board, and Benson's right there with those guys. So if the Browns decide to go for that more versatile running back, Benson would be an excellent choice.
Do you think the Browns end up taking a running back in, 3rd, 4th, 5th round?
I'm shocked they didn't take one last year. I think last year was a much deeper draft for running back. I think you could have got guys in rounds 5 and 6, even some undrafted guys, end up making impacts. I think last year was a deeper draft. I think if you go earlier, I think you can get some high-quality backs in this draft. I just don't know if the Browns will pull the trigger on day 2. I think the earliest they would do it would be day 3.
Fair enough. Casey Kinnamon, Dog Pound Daily Network 2 and 6. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks, Dave.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Dog Pound Daily, as well as Network 2 and 6. Really good Brown stuff. We're going to see you tomorrow on Sports for CLE. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.